Today, we're very lucky to be joined by Keri Pearlson, who is the Executive Director of Cybersecurity at MIT Sloan. Keri has a long history and experience spanning both business, industry, and academia, and really is at the forefront with her colleagues here at MIT of a radically different approach to thinking about the challenges of cybersecurity, not only as a technical kind of issue, but also understanding it's a human and organizational one. And at times like this, when there is so much going on, we think that it's really important that we all remember these key core kind of ideas around the threats, but how to protect ourselves. And in fact, not only our teams and our offices, but like many of you probably, I'm sitting at home right now, how do we also protect our families and keep them cyber secure as well? So with that, I would like to hand over to Keri, who's going to make some opening remarks and introduce her work to us, and then we'll have a discussion at the end. So please do feel free to ask questions in the Q&A as we go along, and I will look through those and try to ask a few of them towards the end of the presentation. So Keri, I think you have control of the slides, so please feel free to move forward and begin your opening remarks.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my home and my home office. Today, we're going to talk about keeping our teams and our families cyber secure. And as Peter mentioned, I run the Cybersecurity at MIT Sloan, or CAMS, as we like to call ourselves, Research Consortium. For those of you that have plugged into MIT's cybersecurity work before, you might know us as what we used to call ourselves IC Cubed, the Interdisciplinary Consortium for Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. And as I was telling Peter yesterday, it's taken me several years to be able to say that in one breath. We do look at organizational issues in cybersecurity. We are part of the Sloan School, and we're looking at the management, leadership, governance kinds of questions. And today I'm just really pleased to bring to you some of our research, but in the context of how we can keep our teams and our families cyber secure in this COVID pandemic world. So we all know that cybersecurity is a big concern. I'm sure you've seen many, many headlines over the years. These are just a couple about Facebook back from 2018 and 2019, where we saw that hundreds of millions of user passwords were left exposed, and that caused quite a stir for Facebook. But more recently, if you're a Words with Friends player, you might have seen this, or you might have gotten a note from Zynga telling you that they had much of their data exposed. 200 million players' data was exposed back in, this is October 2019. So I was wondering what the latest was, and I noticed since we've all been in this pandemic world and trapped at home, Marriott was hacked again. 5.2 million guests were affected. Around the same time, back in the end of March, early April, we also learned that Amtrak was hacked. And I was looking last night to see what some of the latest stories are, and Honda was hit by a ransomware attack. So even though these aren't making the big headlines today, you really have to kind of look for what the latest hacks are. They're happening. And we like to look at some of the statistics in our research center. We know there are something like 200,000 security events happening to the average large company every day. Now, the fact that you may not know that is good news. It means that for the most part, your technology is keeping you safe, and your technology people are keeping you safe, and your security operations center, or SOC, are managing most of the knocks on the door, if you will. But we like to say at our center, there are really only two types of organizations: those that know they've been attacked, and those that don't yet know that they've been attacked. Professor Madnick, my colleague in this research center, has done research in this area for many, many years, and we find that there are very few, probably none, organizations that haven't at least had some sort of security event that may or may not have been handled by their security people. So what I want to talk about today is how this COVID-19 world has created sort of the perfect storm of fear, uncertainty, doubt, or FUD, as we like to call it, and chaos. When you add in the fact that we're working from home, that we're not around our colleagues on a day-to-day basis, that it's a little extra effort to call your IT people if you see something that looks kind of odd, or to call your neighbors, your coworkers, what we've seen is that this is the perfect storm for the bad guys. We've seen all sorts of scams, from stimulus payment scams, targeting college students, lots of kinds of fraud. In fact, I pulled the information from the Federal Trade Commission's website last night about the latest numbers of the impact this is having, and COVID-19 related fraud and scams, mostly done over technology, emails, and websites. You can see here that there's been something like almost $70 million in total fraud loss. If you look at the graph on this page, you can see that up until about March 1st, it was relatively none from COVID-19, but you can see a very jagged bar since the COVID pandemic has hit. And there have been, hundreds of thousands of reports of fraud based on COVID-19 kinds of scams or related scams. So what that tells me is that the bad guys have upped their game, and that means that we have to do the same. We have to up our game. We're all working from home. We're trying to keep ourselves, our families, and our organizations safe, but it's never been more urgent or more important than it is today. The technology that we have in place will keep us somewhat secure, but it can't keep us 100% secure. It doesn't know what it doesn't know. And the bad guys are constantly finding new ways to set up fraud, set up scams that will get through what our technologies know about. We know that in some cases, 90% or more of the breaches start with some type of human error. Somebody clicks on a phishing email, an email that, fraudulent email that's sent to trick you into some inappropriate action. I think we're all pretty savvy and know that the Nigerian prince is not going to leave us $1 million if we help him get his money out of Nigeria. We pretty much know that's a scam. But there are all sorts of variations on that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that fall victim to these variations because they want to know what it's about, or they really think that they might make $1 million if they click on this email and help Aunt M get her money out of a bad situation. I've seen many variations that are still going and circulating around the internet. Fake websites with bad information and bad links and phony offers are rampant under the COVID-19. We're going to talk about a few of those in a minute. And then bad files, files that have code embedded in them designed to either download some sort of malware to your computer or to your company's computer, possibly your family's computers, your network. Those are also rampant. And those are the kinds of things that our technologies won't catch if they haven't seen them before. So the current pandemic has been accompanied by a major increase in cybercrime. So let's take a look at what some of those look like. I'm going to talk about 5 different kinds of fraudulent types of situations that we're seeing today. The first one are email scams. And I'm sure all of you have been getting emails from organizations that you may know, or maybe organizations that you don't know. The bad guys make these emails look pretty compelling. This is one from the world, supposedly from the World Health Organization. It's not. What it's asking you to do is to click on that little blue dot, that little blue square in the middle. And if you do, it downloads a malware file to your system, which then can propagate through your system to your company's computers. We've seen CDC fake emails that talk about updating the new cases of COVID in your cities and then asking you to log in for information. And if you give some sort of login credentials, of course, they're stealing your credentials. We've even seen these around government stimulus checks a little bit earlier this spring when there was a lot of uncertainty and chaos around how people could collect their stimulus. So you have to be really careful about an email. We're starting to see, or we have seen many emails about that look like business emails. In fact, when I showed this presentation to some of my friends, one of my friends was telling me that someone in her office actually got an email that looked like it was from a manager in the office that asked her to go buy some electronic gift cards because the manager needed those gift cards to give as gifts. Cost about $1,000. And she said, how do you want me to pay for this? And the email came back and said, put it on your credit card and I'll pay you back. I need them right away. You can't call me, just send the electronic gift cards. she did. And of course, it turns out that it was a scam, and it cost her or her company $1,000 because the email looked real and it was from somebody she thought she knew, but it turns out it wasn't. So the lesson here, of course, is make sure you know who the emails are from and that they're really from the people you think they're from before you click on any links or follow any instructions in those emails. Another area we're seeing a lot of uptick in behavior in the COVID world are actually screens and files that look real, like this one from the Johns Hopkins Center that's monitoring COVID cases. But this particular file has it's been weaponized. It has code built into it. So if you were to bring this particular one up, it would download some malware to your system. Now, this is not a map from the Johns Hopkins website. It was somebody who had copied this, embedded some malware code in it, and then sent it around to people. So this one is particularly insidious in my mind because the data is actually valid from the day it was stolen. It's not the most current data, but you wouldn't know that. You're checking these sites so that you can see what the latest COVID spreads are. And you wouldn't know that this particular one had bad code embedded in it. So what you want to do is make sure that you know the source of the codes of the files that you open. If you were going to look up your COVID case spread in your area, then you want to go to the website that has that information instead of clicking on an email that might have a file downloaded for you. This particular one, I pulled this off a security website, and this one is designed to steal your username, your passwords, and maybe some of your personal information like account numbers, and then it sends that information back to the hacker. A third thing we're seeing, I'm sure many of you know what ransomware is, but we're seeing an increase in ransomware. Ransomware is where the malicious actor steals data from your company and or locks up your computer with some sort of screen like this one that says, hi, all your files are encrypted by NetWalker. That's a particular type of ransomware software. All encrypted files for this computer now have the extension, and it's got a line there, and it says, if you can read this text before encryption ended, and it gives some examples about that's because your computer slowed down while we're doing all the encryption. And then it tells you what to do. And in this case, it wants you to download another browser, which is the Tor browser, the browser for the dark web. Go to their website, enter that personal code, and then you'll get instructions about how much Bitcoin you have to send them. Now, the problem with ransomware and blackmail attacks, of course, is sometimes even if you pay the money, you don't get your files back. And second of all, if you're a big company where this happens and you pay the ransom, you could become known as a company that pays ransom, and that could open you up to more vulnerabilities. However, in this particular case, this file was downloaded by a file called coronavirus_covid-19.vbs. So this one came as an attachment to an email. An unknown person could click on it because it looks like it's about COVID information. And then what it does is it launches this ransomware attack on your system. If this happens to you, my advice is to seek help. Call your IT department on your phone, or possibly if it's in your company, your IT department or your security people will know what to do about it. But don't try to fix it yourself. Don't go pay the ransom. It might be something known in your company or not, and there's no guarantee you're going to get your files back even if you pay the ransom. If you don't have an IT company to call, you could call your local FBI or Department of Homeland Security offices. They often have resources that they can point you to that could help you over any kind of attack like this. But we're seeing a lot of this, and in this case, it's taking advantage of the chaos in the COVID world to use a file name that would be something people would click on. The fourth one are just the general vulnerabilities from working from home. I know many of you have heard about the Zoom bombing and the Zoom attacks that happened early on. Zoom was actually started by folks that had found some of the other webinar software to be particularly onerous in terms of how you get into it and how you use it. And that was because those systems had a lot more levels of security and technology built in. So they built a very simple, easy one to use. Of course, when it's simple and easy to use, in this case, it also came with some vulnerabilities that allowed people to hack in. But the most common vulnerability were actually human error. People were stealing emails or getting emails with your Zoom number and sometimes your Zoom password, and then just logging in and doing malicious activity during Zoom meetings. So that's something we hadn't even thought about before. People were working from home, students, kids were working from home with their classmates, with their students. Now we'll have summer camps doing the same thing. Zoom, of course, has upped their game, and there's lots more security built in. In fact, we're using Zoom today. In part, you got a link with a password, so that adds, that's an encrypted password, that adds some levels of security. But the software itself actually has some encryption built in, new encryption routines built in, and new security built in. But all the webinar technologies have some vulnerabilities at some level, and those are something new to what we're now experiencing because so many of us are working from home. The other area where we're seeing vulnerabilities from home are with our networks. I know I work from home, and I'm right now on my home network, and my daughter's in the other room, and she's also on my home network. And I'm sure you have family and friends, perhaps neighbors, maybe sharing a network. You want to be very careful when you share a network that everybody has their security up to date, because one person downloading something, clicking on the wrong email could infect others on the same network. That's what happens in the office. The sort of wisdom for this is if you are at a home and your home has two networks, maybe your primary and your guest network, then you can use one and your family can use the other one. And that would help protect yourself from any malware that might be downloaded from your kids playing a game or from somebody else's computer on the network that might get some sort of virus or something. So we're seeing a lot more vulnerabilities from working from home, in part because we moved there so fast. Companies weren't ready for it. Companies weren't ready for us to be working from home at quite the amount that we are. But today we're seeing many of those being addressed, and I'm sure we'll see new ones. The bad guys are always looking for new ways to get into our systems. The last one I want to talk about here is fake websites, fake pharmacies, fake remedies. We've seen a huge increase in the number of spam campaigns using fake news about the virus spreading, remedies that you might try, personal protective equipment sites. I actually got caught by one of those. I saw some cute masks that I thought would be fun to have a couple of months ago, and I bought them. I gave my credit card number and I sent off for the masks, and I never got them. And about 2 months later, I inquired, and I was convinced that the website had been fake. So I was fortunate enough that my credit card covered the loss, and I got my money back. But it looked real, and it may have been real, but they didn't provide the service that I thought I had signed up for. We're seeing a huge increase in the number of websites offering all sorts of things that you might want for COVID. So they're coming in advertisements. They're coming in, if you do a search on something, they're optimized for SEO. And so they come up in your Google searches. So you want to be really careful if you go to some of these websites that you actually know who the site is that you're sending money to or giving personal information to. Many of these sites are just designed to steal money. And you know, in some countries, it doesn't take a whole lot of money, a whole lot of successes for them to more than pay for the effort that they put in to build these incredibly looking websites. But some of these are actually designed to spread malware and to download malicious code to your systems or to your networks. So the best thing to do is to check out a site before you actually try to do business with them. Or do business with a reputable site that you already know is valid. So those are the 5 kinds of specific COVID-related scams and things we're seeing pop up. In our research at MIT, we have a project we call our Building a Culture of Cybersecurity project. I happen to lead that project, so I love to talk about it. And we asked the question, how can we create a culture of cybersecurity in our organizations like we have a culture of safety? And our research suggests that the key to changing the behaviors of people in our organizations and likewise in our homes is to think about the values, attitudes, and beliefs and change the values, attitudes, and beliefs. So very simply, we have this model we've created We're trying to drive cybersecure behaviors. We're trying to get people to not click on emails that are questionable. We're trying to get people in our organizations to be more aware of something that might come through on a website, or if they see something, say something, or to help their neighbors if there's some confusion, to work together in groups. So we're trying to drive cybersecure behaviors. And we know from our research that it's the culture, the values, attitudes, and beliefs of the organization that really drive the behaviors. If you think cybersecurity is important, then you're more likely to take cybersecure actions. If your manager takes a minute at the beginning of every meeting to talk about cybersecurity, or even share latest COVID-19 breaches that they saw or heard about, or fake websites, it's going to raise not only your awareness, but it's going to raise the priority, the importance of that kind of topic in your mind. So what we want to do is change the values, attitudes, and beliefs of people both in our families and in our organizations, so we can drive cybersecure behaviors. We think the values, attitudes, and beliefs are driven by two different sets of constructs. First are external influences. So if you're in a financial services company or you're in a healthcare company, you're going to have certain cultural things just because of the nature of the company, the industry you're in. Certain countries have stronger cybersecurity or privacy data privacy laws. That's going to drive a certain mindset. Sometimes the local environment drives a certain mindset. Those are influences that will change or influence your values, attitudes, and beliefs. But those aren't things that managers, or in some cases parents, have really any control over. The managerial mechanisms are things you do have control over. For example, you have control over sharing information with your team or with your family. You have control over, if you're in an organization, rewarding or in some cases penalizing people who do bad behaviors, or rewarding people that do good behaviors. For example, we've seen in one company, an organization has created badges for people, and when they complete a training course, they get a badge that they get to add to their email that shows that they are a defender of the company. In another example, we saw a big marketing campaign that a manager had put together to spread the word about how important it was to keep the company safe and secure, and ways to do it, to empower people to take appropriate behaviors. In one company, they made videos that were funny and engaging. In fact, they were so engaging that they found that many of their employees were asking when was the next video coming out. They were interested. And so they're raising awareness and also sharing what the things are that people can do, changing the attitudes, changing the beliefs, changing the values. And that's what we've been studying at MIT. So we have many examples of this. This is something you're interested in, you can reach out to me afterwards. You can see the website here on the page and grab more information about it. So let me summarize just briefly what some things are to look out for. So you want to watch out, especially today, but this will apply in general, for calls from people that purport to be someone or some company that they aren't, emails or texts, particularly when there's something new and some chaos around how to respond, like the government stimulus or COVID-19 remedies. Of course, you know not to hand out your social security number or bank account numbers or passwords over the phone. Preferably not in text or in emails, unless you know specifically who you're calling or who you're talking to. What I do when someone asks me for that information is I ask for their phone number, I look up their phone number, and then I call them back, or I call the company directly and do a sort of a dual authentication kind of review and make sure that I'm giving that information to the person or the organization I think I'm giving it to. You want to watch out for online ads, masks, personal protective equipment, test kits, vaccinations, medicines, all these things that we're seeking during COVID-19. The bad guys know we're seeking those, and they're spinning up websites to try to steal your money or your credentials or to download malware. So you want to make sure that anything you buy is from a reputable source. Demands for payments. This one kind of struck me as interesting. Again, the malicious actors are looking for any entryway they can find to get in and steal money. We like to say it in our research center, we have to lock down every door and every window in our house. They only have to find one little crack to get in. And that's true with cybersecurity. The malicious actors only need to find one way in from a small number of people to make back the money that they've invested in trying to do their malicious work. So we see demands from fake emails from utility companies, phone companies, internet companies, all of these demanding that you make payment because you're behind on your payment or because of some made up, fabricated reason. If you get any of these kind of requests, please call the company first and verify. Oftentimes that's not really a demand from that organization. And finally, calls or emails from coworkers. I told you my story about somebody's boss supposedly asking them to send some gift cards. So the very savvy malicious actors, they're doing what we call spear phishing. They're learning about you and your organization through publicly available information, or perhaps through some other hack that they successfully carried out. And then they go after you with information that makes it sound even more real. So if you get a call or an email from a coworker, particularly while we are working remotely or working from home, contact them separately. Don't just reply to the email, contact them and see if they really are asking you to do what they're asking you to do, if it sounds a little strange. All right, so call to action. What can you do today to help protect you and your family and your team, your organization? First of all, you want to do that very annoying thing, which is make sure all your software is up to date. If you get something that says that your phone or your laptop software has an update, you want to download those. I know sometimes it's very difficult and annoying because it does something else to your system, changes the interface or something else. But most of those are designed to fix vulnerabilities. And the easiest way the bad guys can get into your system is because you didn't patch something and there was a known vulnerability and they wrote an exploit for that vulnerability. So keep your systems and your software up to date. Protect your key assets, particularly things like your bank account and your credit cards. Change your passwords as often as you're comfortable with. Use dual authentication if you can. I know, for example, when we log in at MIT, we log into our systems and then we have a dual authentication system that then either makes us enter a code or calls us and calls our cell phones and makes us push a button to authenticate that we actually are the person we say we are. If you're wondering if your email has been compromised, I've shown on this screen a website called IHaveBeenPwned, PWNED.com. You can go to that website and you can type in your email and it will show you any of the breaches where your email was discovered. So my general thought is my information is out there. I can't protect it from getting out there. It's out there. I'm going to use websites. I'm going to buy things online. I'm going to enter my email so I can get receipts and information. So for me, the strategy is to protect my key assets by monitoring and managing and making sure there's no damage from the information that's already out there. So that would be something you could do also to protect your assets. Obviously, don't click on emails or websites that you don't know well. If you do, then contact your support people immediately. They'll be able to tell you what to do next. You want to model the values, attitudes, and beliefs you want from those around you. You want to make heroes out of the people that do things that protect your digital assets, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your friends, or your coworkers. You want to show them it's one of your priorities, because if it's one of your priorities, it will become one of their priorities also. And you do that by talking about it, by sharing. You might even share that you sat in on this webinar today, or by talking about things you see in the news. Getting things out in the light is something that's really important. Making sure that things aren't hidden in the dark. The bad guys thrive on the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the chaos that's going on right now. And of course, this pandemic has all of that. So bring issues out in the open and discuss them. That will not only help you figure out how to manage them yourselves, but it'll also show how important it is to the people around you. And finally, if you can, keep aware of the latest breaches so you know if you've been affected. If you're a Marriott customer, you might want to go change your password if you haven't done that recently. If you're a Honda customer, you might want to contact your Honda dealer and make sure that your information is still is not something that's been compromised. If you're an Amtrak customer, go change that password. You wouldn't even know to go do that unless you kept aware of the latest breaches. So I do that every now and then by doing Google searches on the latest breaches and seeing what's out there. And I try to keep my passwords as up to date and protected as I can. All right, so now comes my commercial. As I mentioned, my research group is cybersecurity at MIT Sloan. Our strategic objective is to raise the cybersecurity level of all parts of the organization, public and private, big and small, global and domestic. We have research in fundamental issues of cybersecurity strategy, and we're funded by companies like yours. We've also brought to MIT 2 executive education programs. And so if you're interested in more information, reach out to me. Here's my email and here's our website, or submit a question here to the Q&A, or check out the executive education programs at this website for MIT Sloan Exec Ed. That's all I got. Peter, back to you.
Thank you so much, Keri. And this is really a very comprehensive and in places appropriately detailed discussion of the subject. And as I've been tracking the questions coming in, I think you've covered almost all of the questions and thoughts that people were contributing. So noting the time, maybe I should just summarize and say that we will, of course, be following up with everyone who did register for the webinar and share these materials, and we'll be posting some more follow-up information to our website in the next couple of days as well, which will address any sort of other questions that were asked that we didn't feel were covered in this presentation. And perhaps my parting thought, if I could summarize, Keri, is that yes, many of us, of course, can and should rely on our IT departments and others to help keep us safe, but it's also equally important that we all remain aware, alert, and act when we realize that despite all of our awareness and being alert, that all of us sometimes find that we've got ourselves clicked on a link that we shouldn't, or replied to an email that perhaps we suddenly realized that we shouldn't. And don't just wait and see what happens. Reach out to your support system in your company or wherever else you can find them to help you take action to make sure that you don't become a victim of these criminals. So thank you, Keri. I don't know if you've got any, if you want to just comment briefly on my sum up. Was there anything I missed that you think we should leave everyone as a takeaway?
No, I think that was brilliant, Peter. Thank you. If I leave you with one idea, it's that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, not just your technology people. And as even our executive education programs are designed for the non-technical executive to try to bring those ideas back to light. So don't be shy, jump in, and you can make a difference just by jumping in and asking questions. So thank you.
So thank you, Keri Pearlson. Thank you all of you for joining us today, wherever you are in the world, and we'll look forward to seeing you in future online, and hopefully many of you back on campus at MIT when we all return to our old normal of physical living.